Good morning, afternoon. I know there's people calling in from all over, and hello from wherever you're calling from. Thank you so much for joining us today for LibraryCon 2022. I can't believe that it's 2022 and that it's almost the end of the summer here in New Jersey and in the East Coast. And we're so excited for you to be here today. We have a huge, exciting program for you. I don't want to take up much time in the beginning. I just want to let you know that if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. There's a program for today that I'm sure most of you have already accessed, but if not, we have it in the chat for you and in the Q&A. We hope that you will put also, if you have a question that you'd like to ask Ralph Macchio, we're going to try to get those at the end too. So welcome to LibraryCon 2022. We know that whether you're a librarian or somebody that works in a library or a patron of your favorite local library, we know more than anybody that pop culture and graphic novels and all titles fandom are so popular in the library systems. And it's really, this is one of our favorite programs every year. And we're so excited to have you here today. And we really have like really amazing resources for you if you click through in the program to the different title lists. But we want you all to be ready and get those books on the shelves for 2022 and 2023. And thank you for your enthusiasm and your support and for always attending our programs. We've missed a lot of programming in person, but one of our favorite programs, whether it's virtual or in person, are the LibraryCon. So we're excited to be here with you again this summer. And let's get going. All right, so I am so excited to introduce our first guest to you today, our keynote speaker, who we honestly couldn't be more excited to talk to. Ralph Macchio is an actor, producer, director. He's got so many credits under his belt, no pun intended. He's best known for his celebrated performance in Francis Ford Coppola's The Outsiders, the hit film My Cousin Vinny, which I absolutely love, and probably most notably for the title role in the popular classic The Karate Kid, and all of the successing movies and things that have come from it. And expanding further on the Karate Kid universe, Ralph continues to reprise this role in the hit Netflix series Cobra Kai. He lives in Long Island with his family, and we are so happy to have you here today, Ralph.
Okay, here I come. Hey, everyone. Wow, that worked. I had my finger on the trigger ready to hit it, and we appeared. Oh, good to be here. Thank you. And nice ramp up. And my cousin Vinny, well, you're from New Jersey, right? So you're down the street and around the corner. But great to be here, and thanks.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you here. We've all learned a lot about technology in the last couple of years. So if anybody has issues or anything, let us know. But let's get talking about your book. We're so excited about your new book. And I thought we could talk about the bigger picture of the book and then talk about some of the specifics of it. I have to put my glass on because this is just how it is now.
Yeah,
Waxing on is going to be a really fun book. People love you. You're one of these iconic people in the zeitgeist all the time, really. I mean, because even though a lot of the movies that you did were like originally were a long time ago, they've stayed. You know, people that are my kids' age and younger even still love your movies and Karate Kid and everything that you do. So one of the bigger questions I have is, how does that feel to know, like, some people do a movie and nobody remembers it, or 20 years ago it's very obscure, but I don't think anything that you've done has ever become obscure. So I'm just curious how that feels in a big way.
Well, it's kind of a unique blessing that's kind of evolved over time. I mean, the Karate Kid being the biggest in that grouping. I mean, The Outsiders is another one. It was, I mean, started as a S.E. Hinton novel, and that I read in seventh grade when I was 12, and that's one that has stood the test of time. Due in part to the fact that it's a required reading, or it has been for so many decades in school, in middle schools. And My Cousin Vinny is another one that just it's the late for dinner movie, I call it, because if it's on, you're just going to be late for dinner. because every setup pays off beautifully. But the Karate Kid is in a, another level of pop culture and cinema and relevance. I mean, that's part of one of the reasons I wrote Waxing On is to sort of share my story walking in the shoes of this character, which is coming upon, it's 38 years ago, 39 when I shot it. And it's kind of a celebration of that character and that movie and its place in pop culture. It's a look at it's I wanted it to be equal parts nostalgia and contemporary relevance at the same time, which is in essence what has happened. It's never kind of gone away from me. Some people will say everything, I wrote this in the book, everything old is new again, and I hear that a lot. But for me, it never got old because the fans never allowed it to get old. It was always current and relevant, just not necessarily at the level of a smash hit Netflix series that is a continuation. Um, it's very special to have that opportunity to even play a character or tell a story or to continue the evolution of a character in that certain world that reaches 2 and 3 plus generations. I mean, it's this I made a joke on Stephen Colbert when I said that back in the day people were like, "Hey, aren't you the Karate Kid?" And now they're like, "Hey, don't you play the dad on my favorite TV show?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's me. I'm the dad on your favorite TV show." So it's rewarding in that way. It keeps the legacy going.
Yeah, I read your book. It made me feel really old and really young at the same time.
Good, good.
I feel
Yes.
like we've had sort of similar, childhood things. When I was thinking the part where you're talking about, Happy Days and Chips Ahoy, like how could you have a better life, And now it's like all these years later, and between like my cousin Vinny and the Karate Kid, I feel like these things are mentioned daily around, even my house.
Mm.
And, a couple of years ago when my kids started watching Cobra Kai, I remember my one son saying, "Mom, have you ever heard of this movie, The Karate Kid?" I'm like, yeah, I've heard of The Karate Kid. So it's just been really fun. And also, I think one of the things, a lot of the book, in a lot of parts of the book, you do, I don't want to say comparisons, but sort of to like the Rocky movies. And I think the reason why The Karate Kid and Rocky movies work in that way is because it brings really big themes to the pop culture and to people. It's like you kind of relate to somebody in one way or another in these films and in the show and all that stuff. And I thought, maybe, do you think that the Karate Kid would have stayed so relevant over the years if it wasn't for the bigger themes of like feeling left out or feeling bullied? Do you think that those themes play a big part in it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the Karate Kid film works on a human level, and that's why, I mean, all the pop culture stuff, to get him a body bag and was the kick legal and the waxing on and painting fences and all the chores becoming karate moves. That's all great storytelling, but why I think it stands the test of time is, and I hear this almost daily, is it affected people's lives in a way where they felt Daniel LaRusso was the every kid next door. He had no business, and I think I write that he had no business winning anything. So the fact that those aspirational qualities, those wish fulfillment element, but yet feeling grounded and connected to the journey he is on, be it adolescence or feeling fish out of water or feeling out of balance in your life, the single parent element of the Karate Kid film, fatherless teen trying to navigate life, finding his human Yoda in Mr. Miyagi that guides him through this challenging time. I mean, we've all been in some form of that. Maybe not as successful as a Hollywood movie, but we all feel a piece of that character, and even going forward. And I think those themes, as you mentioned, whether it's the underdog overcoming obstacles or the feeling, the outsider, pun intended, are elements of human life, and so it connects on that level, and I think that's what raises it above it being another 80s movie, another 80s categorized movie is uh, um, it has resonance and depth to it. And Rocky was directed by the same filmmaker, John Avildsen, who I allude to a lot in this book because he painted that canvas. Robert Kamen wrote a beautiful screenplay, and but a testament to Cobra Kai's success is all these original characters that come back in the Cobra Kai series and are just hitting it out of the park. And it's like great comfort food to see Elizabeth Shue and to see Randy Heller and to see Martin Kove and Thomas Ian Griffith come back as their characters. It started someplace, and that's why a big part of this book for me was, you know, it's interesting. I never liked history in school. And as I'm getting older, and I'm ironically become part of history in an odd way, I enjoy talking about the past and why we got to where we are. And the Waxing On book does that, with where these characters are, where my life is, what I've gained from it, missteps, do-overs I'd like, the rich rewards of playing a character that means so much to people. That's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like a lot of books become these like weird, scandalous tell-alls, and this is really just a celebration. I feel like there's a lot of humility in it, where you talk about how didn't realize some of the things you were doing were bigger than they were at the time, and
Mm.
I love how you and Pat stayed friends over the years. So a lot of these human connections really are really important in the book, and it's nice to see as a fan. And I feel like, lately, I feel like the last couple of years we've been hearing how separated and divided people are. So when something can bring people together, I just don't think there's anything more important than that right now. So I
Hmm.
feel like that is what I really appreciate about this book. It's a celebration, but it's also like, it's not a perfect book. Everybody, there's a lot of, aspects of it where you're like, well, I made a mistake here and there. And, that's all
Yeah.
right. We've become so unforgiving of little things. And I love that you're so honest in it. And how was that process for you?
That's great.
To be
First of all,
honest.
thanks for saying that, because I mean, I launched into writing the book proposal before we ever pitched to publishing houses and such. I mean, it was about we were locked in the pandemic, and in the early part of it, I didn't know if Cobra Kai was going to get another season, and I was, we were all in our houses, and I was just uh, it just felt like, and everything was so divided politically, and everything, was upside down in 2020, and it just felt like I had something that could kind of cohesively break all those barriers, and it would not have any prejudice, or it would just be my story in the shoes of this character, and I wanted to be honest with the ups and downs of it, and it sort of broke down in three acts in a way. The first act of the book is really the making of, the behind the scenes stories of how some of the most iconic moments came to be, the getting cast and working with other co-stars. The second act is kind of the afterlife. What happened when the crane takes flight? What happened to my life? What the highs and lows of all that, and then sort of navigating through those years. And then the last act is really the lessons from the experience and lessons in my life, the givebacks, the wisdom that you gain over time, and then a tribute to the fans. That's sort of kind of how it played, and I felt the only way I could tell the story is by being honest with my feelings and genuine. And no, there's only one person. You talk about the tell-alls and the scandalous, memoirs, and this is sort of, I call myself the anti true Hollywood story.
Yeah, I
I,
love that.
I write that in the book, and in a way, I learned lessons over that time, and the only person that gets thrown under the bus in this book, if anyone, is me.
Is you. I was
And
gonna say you're the only person that you're hard on in this
yeah,
book
but
is you.
because I also listen, self-deprecation is my, it's what's for dinner. It's like sarcasm and self-deprecation are my favorite hobbies. So, but in a humble, earnest way, not in a, gratuitous kind of way.
Yeah, no, it's funny, and I think it's really, I think everyone who hasn't read it is in for a real treat. For so many reasons. So there's questions I know the librarian sent in, so I just want to ask you one or two more, and then we'll get
Sure.
to those. But something I really wanted to say, which is interesting, because like life just is so strange, and I never expected in my whole life I'd be talking to you one on one. But I have to tell you, during COVID, and this will get into the Cobra Kai part of the conversation. One of the things I appreciated so much during COVID was, you know how it was for a while. There was no new content. Like if you were watching something new, it was just because you hadn't seen it before, but it wasn't actually new. And I really appreciated that your cast and crew and you guys did that next season of Cobra Kai. And it was one of the only new things that came
Mhm.
out for a while. Um, and I remember very specifically feeling very cheered up from that. So, how was that process of being like one of the only shows to be filming in that time? And what made you guys decide to do that?
Well, what actually happened, at the point that we went into lockdown, we had shot season 3 of Cobra Kai, but YouTube, where it originally was not moving forward with ordering a fourth season, because Google, who owns YouTube, I won't spend a lot of time with this, but they were changing their plan, and they were leaving the scripted community. So now we had season 3 in the can, and we wanted to see if we can move the show. In essence, we moved it to Netflix. But this was at a point that the world is shutting down, and we're asking a company to buy a show. So we knew we had the content. We didn't, so we had it in our back pockets. It was about making the deal, Sony Television. So, so in essence, that when that happened, and then Cobra Kai season 3 came out, that was done a while back. It was lost in translation, if you will, or held. It was in, and so, but then we wound up shooting season 4 and 5 during the pandemic, during the second half of the pandemic, back to back. And that's in essence when I wrote Waxing On. I was writing that we were in the bubble and we were shooting, getting tested 3, 4 times a week, face masks, the whole thing, doing scenes. And then I'd order room service, I'd order food in, and I'd sit at my computer and talk about the first time I met Elizabeth Shue, or what Pat Morita brought to my life, or that one role that I wish I could have had, or all those things started to, it
Yeah.
was very nostalgic and emotional, going down that place. And there were more than a few times where I was brought to, you know, sort of, I mean, I didn't have tears running down my face, but there were moments that I got choked up, and the eyes brimming with tear, just thinking about a moment, thinking about some of the people that aren't here anymore that helped create this piece of cinema artistry that I now am still portraying. Pretty
Yeah.
wonderful.
No, I can imagine, because I love books like this. I love stories like this where everybody knows where they were at a certain time. And
Mhm.
I mean, I appreciated your shout out to Elizabeth Shue in the book, and I got like a moment where I was like, oh, I remember. And then like you just have these moments where you remember, and you're right. There's people that aren't in your life anymore, and um, you know, these I like Waxing On because it's a book that celebrates life in especially this book. It's so good at like having a celebrating the past, but then also you created this new universe that's going to keep
Mhm.
going. So it's kind of just timeless. And it reminds me of my dad, and then it reminds me of my kids, and I'm sure their kids are going to watch it. It's just really a really wonderful moment in culture for this. And one Cobra Kai question I wanted to ask you, and then we'll get to some of the librarian questions, is that I think that I was a huge How I Met Your Mother fan, and so was
Mhm.
my older son. And he said, so that's why he watched Karate Kid, because he wanted to see who was right in the whole like
Right, right, right.
Iyanu,
Yeah.
uh, argument with you. And he said, Mom, um, Barney's right. That was an illegal kick. So it's kind of this fun ethical thing. But the bigger point is, I think that what Cobra Kai has that the Karate Kid didn't was what I think all of us have become better at over the years is empathy. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think any of us ever even considered taking Johnny's perspective when we watched the Karate Kid. Like, yeah, you were the new kid. We all felt bad for you in the movie and in the, in the stories. But, Johnny, you did. You showed up, this new guy. And it's interesting how empathy has become really important.
Hmm.
And I think Cobra Kai is so good at getting everybody's story and
Right.
realizing that somebody can have a story and react one way, and then somebody can have the same story and react a different way. And
Yeah.
how important is that part of it for you and the lessons that you're teaching there?
Yeah, it's very much so. I mean, listen, the movies of the 80s, not all of them, but certainly were very black and white, and Karate Kid is very black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Miyagi good, Kreese bad, Daniel hero, Johnny jerk. Um, and that's, that worked for that story. The How I Met Your Mother of it all, that writer's room, and I do allude to that in, I guess, chapter 8, Theories and Debates and the Birth of Cobra Kai. Um, it becomes the internet and fan conventions started. That's where all that happened. I mean, Mr. Miyagi steals a black belt and just gives it to Daniel because you need one to get in. That's pretty illegal too. I mean, there's so many, but it's a movie, folks. We have to tell the story. What's wonderful about Cobra Kai and what John, Josh, and Hayden, the creators of that show, do is dive into the gray areas of all these characters and peel back the onion layers of why is a bully a bully? Where does that start? What is you're not necessarily born a bully. And if things come a little too easy for you, do get a little antagonistic with your pride? Does Daniel LaRusso become a little full of himself, because he has that cocky element? And we would debate back and forth. There are times I don't feel Daniel LaRusso would have necessarily turned out to be exactly how he was in the early parts of the seasons of Cobra Kai. But now it's kind of found its own where there's a little good and a little bad in everybody, and it's about navigating and falling, skinning your knees, getting back up, and fixing it going forward, even though you can't get out of your own way, and you're stuck in your teen high school rivalry. Um, it's a fresh angle into a world of beloved characters, and then you add other shades of gray to them, and they become more fully realized as we all are.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's really there's so many great life lessons. I think it's important for people to have that one person in their life they could count on. There's so many things about it.
Mhm.
I honestly was like, I was nervous to like ask you questions because I thought, what if we run out of things to talk about? I feel like I could talk to you all day. But Jen, why don't you come on and ask some of the questions that were put in the chat so that we can talk about that. And we also know for like audiobook fans, you read the audio, which we're so excited to
Yes,
do.
yes,
Because
I
when
was
you're
so.
reading it, I can hear your voice anyway. So I think the audiobook's gonna be great.
Yeah, I think I was not looking forward to that because it just seemed like such an arduous task, and it was tough because the first time I'd ever done it, and plus, I'd like to talk, but I get tired of hearing myself. Like reading it all at once was a lot. But I had a great director and a great team, and once I found the rhythm, I think it's like, like just what you're hearing right now. That's really my voice and my words. So I think that's it's going to be nice to see how people respond to it.
Yeah, I think that's so important to hear the author's voice. I mean, I know that's a really, amazing way to hear an audiobook. You know it best, right?
Hmm.
Um,
You could have had the title be Two Utes. We were hoping for
But
that. All right, so Jen, I'll let
uh,
you get to some of the questions that
Yeah,
were
and
in
I'll
the chat.
just say, first of all, I know you've been busy talking. I hope you get a chance after to look in the chat because it's just been amazing to see how much love is out there and how
oh,
many
that's
people,
great. Thank you.
really are sharing their stories of how the Karate Kid or outsiders touched them. I saw
I
someone
put my
named their
glasses. I see
son
they're popping up.
Kai
I just don't have my glasses on.
because of it. So,
We'll
just some
send them. We'll
wonderful.
send you all the
Oh,
comments.
great. That'll
Yes,
be
so yeah,
nice.
we can
Thank you.
download them all and send
Thank
them.
you.
Perfect. Um, All right, so I warned you this was coming, but
Okay.
of course, with librarians, they always want to hear your favorite library story, library memory. Can you tell them, just something about libraries, what you think, where they're going, what they mean to you?
Well, I mean, the library story that comes to mind for me is one that it sort of connects with the early part of my career. Is the first, I think the two books that I'm sure the first book that I read cover to cover was The Outsiders, followed closely by Of Mice and Men. Some of the reasons for this is I was not a great reader and I looked for the skinny books. Like A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, yeah, it's a little fat for me. I need So I recall my seventh grade teacher, librarian and English teacher, Mrs. Schwartz, who took the class to in the library at my middle school, which was Burgers Lane Junior High School. And she presented The Outsiders. She presented the book to us, and we all handed the book, and I'm like, okay, well, this one looks cool on the front, like this group of guys. And I remember starting to read that book, and I read most of it at home or in the classroom after that. But that book had such a profound effect on my life and career because I fell in love with it and I felt one of these outsiders because we all, like I alluded to before, have that moment in adolescence where we necessarily don't feel like we fit in and the social class differences and everything else. And although I had a very different and much more blessed life than the Johnny Cade character in The Outsiders, I connected with his physicality, how he looked, how he carried himself, the fact that he didn't feel as up to it as some as the bigger kids. And me being the youngest looking in my class, which I'm still trying to keep going, trying hold back, keep the camera back a little further. And I got to be in that movie. I got to play the part of a lifetime. So that all stemmed from a piece of literature. But I don't have many other like this is the day I did this in the library, or this is, I mean, I remember there was a fight in one of my school libraries. I was in the library and I just hear this yelling and these two kids are
Very
fighting.
Cobra Kai, right?
Yeah, maybe that, I wonder if that was foreshadowing right there. I started with The Outsiders and then The Karate Kid is happening right in front of me.
That's a pretty good library story. I'll
Yeah.
take it. All right, and then I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, but one of the librarians wrote, I know that Mr. Miyagi taught Daniel lessons, but what lessons did Pat Morita teach you?
Oh, I love that question.
Yeah, you know what? He taught me, and maybe not directly, not like I'm going to teach you this, besides ordering sushi, which is true. So there's that, and I write that a little bit in the book, how we would go out and I only ordered the cooked stuff and he'd have the raw stuff. And then as our relationship evolved, pretty soon I was ordering, the sashimi and stuff like that. But I think he taught me as an actor, his genuine dedication to his role and how much of a responsibility he felt in carrying the legacy of his character was something that I bring every day on Cobra Kai today because I feel I am now the mentor to the young cast, and I enjoy. Uh, being hopefully a good example to them in work ethics and just how I approach things. And I think I took a piece of that from how important it was to him to portray this Japanese American character in an authentic way. And hence, we have Mr. Miyagi, which is one of the, great characters in cinema and pop culture for that matter.
Right.
Definitely. Maybe Jen will ask one more question so we don't keep you on too long.
Okay. Actually, I saw this both in our Google Doc and in the chat, so I'm going to have to end with this one.
Okay.
A librarian said that the Cobra Kai franchise inspired her to start taking karate. Any advice on how to find confidence? She's a 21-year-old female librarian And when her sensei found out she was a librarian, he teased her about finding her voice.
He teased her. First of all, the fact that my first answer to that is that makes one of us as far as who's taking martial arts right now. I'm on a break, but I'll be getting back in. It was way easier when I was 20 and 21 years old. Um, so the sensei teased her about finding her
Yes,
voice
because she's a librarian.
because well, then we have to, we have to test his or her knowledge on some great pieces of literature then, So I think that I don't know how to answer that. I mean, if someone's a librarian who's coming in to take martial arts, I just think that broadens the horizons and adds more depth and relevance to that person. I mean, first of all, martial arts is cool, especially now. The Miyagi-Do theory is, philosophy is what I believe in, and I truly live my life that way. The karate is for defense only, and all those finding balance. I mean, balance diet, balance marriage, balance in everything. I've tried to always keep kind of one foot in and one foot out of Hollywood and normal life, if you will. So those are all elements that I'm, and I support. But I don't know. I need to meet this sensei to make fun of my 21-year-old librarian friend. Maybe I'll
21, a
send.
librarian and a martial arts. I mean,
I
come
know.
on.
Come on,
There's
it's
no
great.
stopping you. No
We
stopping
should
you.
send. Yeah, we should have her on Cobra Kai, and I'll have all the senseis just go pay her sensei a visit.
Oh, we got a couple martial artist librarians.
There we
All
go. I
right.
love it. Now that's a whole niche area. Who knows?
Truly, I think
New
maybe
book
that should be
for
an
it.
episode.
Yeah, that's it. No, I like it.
It'd be so different than the Music Man librarian character if we
Yeah,
had a
right.
librarian that started kicking people.
Right. Or just,
Love it.
keeping them in check.
Well, gosh, Ralph, this has been such an honor. I mean, just so fun. There's so
That's
many
great.
things. And like I said, this book is such a treat for all of you. Your talk about your when you gave Pat Morita the award and in
Oh
real
yeah, that
life
was
and all
really
that,
neat.
it's so touching.
Yeah.
Um, I always love when there's an on-screen, like the fact that he was such a mentor to you on screen, and then that important to you in real life. That's just touching, and it's inspiring. And I think people should look for their own Mr. Miyagi, or people should look for their own persons that will help them grow all the time. So
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, with Pat, it was, part of that over time was because during those certain years that we were, in the late 90s and early 2000s, we hadn't seen each other in a long time. You just life gets in the way, but then I'd like to believe that I got wiser. So those moments meant more, and any missteps or times absence of communication when you have that opportunity to thank someone or to share in a moment, especially as one as special as we've had, him and I, and in these roles and what they mean to the world. You take that in and just consider yourself blessed. So, and he felt that way too.
yeah, I love that. So thank you so much for joining us. You're right, Jen. We got so many wonderful comments. We will make sure to get them all to your
Definitely.
publicist to share with you.
Great.
And good luck with the book. Good luck with the rest of Cobra Kai, with
Thank you.
life. I mean, everything. It's been an honor
Busy,
to meet
busy
you.
fall, busy fall
Yeah.
coming up.
Well,
I'm
know
excited.
that all your hard work is appreciated by a lot of people. So
Oh,
we
great.
appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope people buy the book and it has a positive impact.
It does.
And on our program, we're going to share. There's a link where people can get an autographed copy too. So
Yep. Yep.
even
My
even
hand's
better.
really tired.
I bet. How many did
They
you
made you
sign?
read a lot. They made you
A
sign a
lot.
lot. We made you
A
work for
lot.
this.
They keep coming back. I'm like, you done? No, we need more. Okay. I think it's a good sign. I'm hoping it's a good sign.
That is a good.
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you
Thank
so
you. Take
much. We
care.
really
Bye-bye,
appreciate it.
everyone out there. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye. I'm leaving too, Kelly.
All right. So that was how exciting was that, everybody? Oh my gosh. honestly could have asked him questions all day, but we're not stopping there. This is LibraryCon, so we've got more exciting stuff to come. While our next panel gets put up on screen, I am going to introduce our moderator for the next panel. And again, thank you for everybody that put comments in the chat. We really will make sure we get those to Ralph. So we appreciate you taking your time to do that. And there is a QR code that you can get. You could possibly buy the signed copy while supplies last. So we'll put that in the chat for you, and it's also in the program from today. So our first panel today is a kids and YA panel, because we know that the young voices are ready for graphic novels earlier than we think. And Derek Ivy is going to be our moderator of the first panel. Derek is such a trooper. This I think might be our third LibraryCon that he's helped us with. He's helped us in person before, and now he's become a supporter of our virtual events as well. And Derek is the Youth Services Coordinator at the Suffolk Cooperative Library in Bellport, New York. We're having a Long Island theme here today. He has served on numerous book committees, including We Need Diverse Books, the Walter Awards, the YALSA's Quick Picks for Reluctant Young Adult Readers, the Michael Prinz Award Committee. He is a co-founder of the Long Island Library Pride Alliance. And when he's not at the library, he is usually obsessing over his dogs or chatting all about things pop culture. So this was perfect for you. And he's the co-host of the A Bite of podcast, which sounds really fun. So thank you for being here today. And we're going to get the rest of your panelists up on the screen too, so you can start your program. Hold on. We're getting them. We're collecting them for you. And we apologize. We know that these in-betweens are a little clunky sometimes. And have a great program. Sara, maybe you can start the program off by showing everybody your Ralph Macchio pin.
Yeah, I was saying when we were hi everyone, and thank you for being here. And we love librarians, and I'm so happy to be here. But this is such a full circle moment because I'm a huge fan of the Karate Kid franchise, as I'm sure a lot of you are. So I'm wearing my Daniel LaRusso button from the 80s. Hope that's not too weird. And also the Karate Kid franchise helped inspire the book that I'm going to be talking about today. So I just want to thank him so much for all that he's given all of us.
Absolutely.
So perfect segue. I'm gonna disappear so you guys can have your panel. But Balazs, I just want to say, can you put your camera back on? You're not muted, but your camera's not on. Have a great panel, and I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to quickly introduce you wonderful folks. So on our Kids and YA Must Reads panel today, we have Cecil Castellucci, who is the award-winning and New York Times bestselling author of books and graphic novels for young adults, including Shade, The Changing Girl, Boy Proof, The Plain James, Soupy Leaves Home, The Year of the Beasts, Tin Star, Female Furies, and Odd Duck. In 2015, she co-authored Star Wars Moving Target, a Princess Leia adventure, and she is currently writing Batgirl for DC Comics. Shifting Earth will be published in less than 2 weeks on August 30th, which is very exciting. Born in Lagos, Nigeria, Roye Okupe is an award-winning filmmaker, author, speaker, and entrepreneur whose passion for comics and animation led him to found Unique Studios in 2012. Iyanu, Child of Wonder Volume 2 comes out on October 18th. Sara Farizan is the award-winning and critically acclaimed author of the young adult novels Here to Stay, Tell Me Again How a Crush Should Feel, and If You Could Be Mine. She also has short stories in the anthologies Fresh Ink, All Out, The Radical Element, Hungry Hearts, and Come On In. She has a comic book collection from childhood that continues to grow, and writing My Buddy Killer Croc was a dream come true. My Buddy Killer Croc comes out on September 6th. Rounding out this phenomenal panel of creators is Balazs Lorinczi. They are an illustrator and graphic novelist with some animation and filmmaking background. He grew up in Hungary and now lives in Dundee, Scotland. Doughnuts and Doom will be released on September 20th. Happy Thursday, everyone. So good to see all of you. I felt like that was like some sort of bucket list moment following Ralph Macchio on a library panel. That's pretty fantastic. So thank you all for being here today. As a youth services librarian and someone who works with youth services librarians, we're constantly seeing kids and teens come in and just tear through graphic novels. So I wanted to know from all of you, when did your interest in comics first begin, and why did you want to tell these stories as graphic novels? Cecil, I'll kick it over to you first.
Hi. I don't remember a time where I wasn't reading comics, to the point where even my pillowcase was like a Peanuts comic book, you know, sort of my bed sheets were that. And I remember that I really knew that I knew how to read when I could read my pillowcase because it had like word balloons of like of the Peanuts. So yeah, and I'm also French. So you know, bande dessinée is like a big part of my life. Um so yeah, and then I had a brother who had a superhero pull list. So it was like French comics, indie comics, like cartoons, and superhero comics. So I always knew that I wanted to write them and that I wanted to read them.
I love dreaming of peanuts. I wanted to show you my daily calendar is peanuts, so we share that goodness. Roy, how about you?
Yeah, you know, for me, it was the first time I read an X-Men comic, and I never looked back since then. I think for me, the funny stories is that reading comics and making comics, there's two different stories. For actually making comics, I tried because animation was sort of my first love. And when I tried to do animation, I realized I was too broke to do animation. I humbled myself and took a step back and went into you know, making comics. And I haven't looked back, you know, since then. I just love the medium, and you know, I think it's really one of the places where at least now you're seeing the most diversity, you're seeing the most risk, you know, people taking risk in terms of storytelling. And I think that's what comics is about. Comics is for everyone, and comics goes places that a lot of other mediums can't. So it's one of the reasons I've always loved it.
I have to say the X-Men comics, but also the X-Men animated series, that theme song lives rent free in my head,
It
right? You can
does.
hear that
It literally does.
guitar going at any moment.
Yeah. If I were to ever get married, I'd probably use that as the wedding march, you know, the like dun 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 dun. Yeah, I'm single forever, but I'm just saying that that would be the, you know.
Maybe that should just be your entrance song for anything that you
Oh
do
yeah.
whenever you're
Oh,
coming on stage for
love that.
something.
Like, na-na-na-na-na.
Sarah, how about you? When is your sort of first earliest memory of comics in your life?
Gosh, there was a comic books, like a newsstand in my town, and my mom would take me every Friday when I was about starting at age 5. Um, and so I started on Archie's, I started on Spider-Man, I started on X-Men, I started on Superman, I started on Batman. I've spent much too much time in my whole life thinking about Gotham City, um, and still continue to do so. I've watched all of the Batman animated series, all of the movies, been very disappointed as a 12-year-old by Batman and Robin, which I wrote an essay about, that my elementary school published recently on their website. But so it's just, I've spent a lot of time on comics, and also like Peanuts, Foxtrot, just comic strips, for better, for worse. Even Kathy, people hate on Kathy, but I love her. I think she was doing really revolutionary things at the time. And I still, as an adult, am reading graphic novels. I love them so much. I didn't think I could be a part of it because I can't draw. So I was always a fan and admirer, and I really, drawing, I know you can learn and do it, but these hands, they're not built for it. I don't know. But so it was just such a great dream come true to when DC was looking for young adult authors and middle grade authors of novels, to work with some of their characters. And I knew immediately what I wanted to do and what I wanted to explore. So I loved this opportunity. I hope that people like the book and young readers like the book as much as I loved comics growing up. And I hope to keep writing graphic novels and comics if there are artists that want to throw down with me. So that would be great.
Awesome. And some of the titles that you had mentioned, I mean, that's the beauty of comics, is that there's something for everyone. There's superheroes, but there's slice of life stories, and they're just there for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah.
Balazs, how about you? What is your first memory of comics in your life?
Can you see me, by the way? Is my camera on? No?
No,
No.
unfortunately.
Oh, no, sorry, the app got the better of me. I tried to fix it, but I don't know where to do it, so I apologize for that. But as long as you can hear me, I guess.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, so I'm just reading comics ever since I was born, basically, ever since I can read. So my brain just instantly, when I think of a story, just kind of start to develop it as a comic book story. Ever since I can remember, I tried to draw my own comics as well. So when I came up with the story for Doughnuts and Doom, just instantly like, yeah, this should be a comic. And also when you're a kid and you're just sitting home and try to like do something, comics is the easiest because you just have pencil and paper and you can do it. Anything else like movies and animation is just such a collaborative effort that I think it just naturally developed that I just doing comics whenever I want to do something.
That's great. The power was in your hands already. So
Yep.
my next question sort of touches on something that you mentioned about the idea. So you've all created stories with magic, other worlds, corrupted animals and people, and of course, sewer monsters. So where did the spark for the idea of these stories begin? And Balazs, let's start with you there.
I had the idea for this story as like a short little, like just a skit. Like what if a witch goes to a fast food place and just flies into a rage for something, because customers in fast food places always do, and just curses a food item there. And I thought, oh, a donut would be fun, a cursed donut. And it was just like a very brief idea, and I never managed to develop it until I kind of realized, why if I just do it as like a romantic comedy type of thing, and it gave it like the whole frame to develop the narrative and the characters within, and the whole thing just grew out from there. It's just a funny idea, and then I applied a genre to it, basically. Also,
Yeah.
I really like witches and just urban fantasy as well. So I knew that that's like sort of the setting and the characters I'm going for.
I love a rom-com that starts with a cursed donut. So rare, but everything that I'm looking for.
Hopefully, it's a novel idea.
Absolutely. Sara, how about you? I know you said as soon as you kind of heard about this, you knew exactly where you wanted to go. So how did that start for you?
Yeah, of the DC properties, again, I've spent too much time thinking about Gotham City for most of my life, and I love Batman and Alfred and Robin and Batgirl and everybody, but the most compelling characters for me in Gotham City are the villains, the rogues gallery, like who his adversaries are. And I was thinking about, like, because it's a childhood dream and Batman, I was thinking about all the other things I enjoyed as a kid. So the Karate Kid franchise, the Rocky franchise, the film My Bodyguard. So I thought about what it would it be like for a kid who's new to Gotham City, but instead of being mentored by a Mr. Miyagi or a Mick, or the Adam Baldwin character in My Bodyguard, you're mentored by this guy, who is Waylon Jones, also known as Killer Croc. And the history of Waylon is that he started in the comics, he started as like a sideshow wrestler. So I thought, wouldn't that be cool to sort of have a kid who knew him before moving to Gotham City as a wrestler that he idolized. And so I thought that was a great way in. And if this kid then meets up with him again in Gotham City under the sewers, like they happen upon each other, but they're meeting each other as people who know each other, and it's like your childhood idol. But what do you do if the mentorship is not exactly great for you? And then Andy, the kid who's the main character, has to decide, like, do I stay with my childhood idol or not? And just so this is Croc by Nicoletta Baldari as a wrestler. So you can see a little bit, and she did such an amazing job. So it's really just a story about, like, Croc does great things for Andy in teaching him how to wrestle and how to stand up to bullies. But Andy, as the story goes along, realizes that there might be people in his life that are going to be hurt by this. So it's a story that I think is funny, and I think it's also coming of age and standing up for you and what you believe in, but also making decisions that might be difficult for a young person.
I love the sort of juxtaposition for Andy of where he's idolizing Killer Croc, but like Batman is sort of this annoyance to him and his aunt. Like they've had enough of Batman.
Yeah, when Batman does show up, but he's treated by Andy and Andy's guardian Aunt Meredith as sort of like a you know, unwanted vigilante, and they make fun of his costume, and they're not really thrilled with how he has changed Gotham City in some ways. They're not crazy about the villains either, but the idea that you know, they're not so enamored with Batman was fun to play with.
That feels like your Batman and Robin rage from your childhood coming through.
There's a George Clooney joke in the book where one of the characters meets Bruce Wayne at a gala and says, "Wow, I was just drawn in by his chin. He had like that George Clooney magnetism." So that will be fun for adults who remember that time. Yeah.
Look for that Easter egg for sure.
Yeah.
Cecil, how about you? Where did this spark of an idea for Shifting Earth come from?
Well, it was actually, this is my pandemic baby, I want to say. So here's Shifting Earth, and it's about a botanist named Maeve, who is in near future Earth, and she's trying to rewild. So she's like looking for biodiverse seeds to sort of be able to put together with other monocrops so that, you know, we can have more diversity and flexibility and resilience in our crops. And, you know, I was thinking a lot about food security during the pandemic. I was thinking a lot about the Svalbard, you know, seed bank. I was sitting in my apartment and we couldn't leave the house because there were fires everywhere, and thinking about the climate crisis. And so I started thinking about, like, what if you were presented with a choice where, you know, I mean, you know, science fiction, like, what if you were presented with a choice where there was another Earth that had evolved differently and had all the sustainable kinds of things that we dream about? And I'm a really big believer that one of science fiction's great gifts is that it allows us to imagine futures. And, you know, there's this trend, you know, when you think climate crisis and it's a climate crisis story, that it's going to be apocalyptic and, you know, horrible. But I also think that, you know, there's this term called hope punk where, oh, look, hello, how are you? You know, that there's this idea that, like, what if at the end of the world, instead of coming at you with, you know, with violence, that you came with like a cake, you know, and kindness. And so that was kind of the seed for Shifting Earth. It's in collaboration with Flavia Biondi, who's a great Italian artist. And so that's what I was like trying to think of. And I think one of the things that I think is important is, you know, especially for young people, is to be able to read books and see books where they can imagine positive futures, or imagine that, you know, that actions can matter. And that, you know, I think one of the things that we all say with the climate crisis is that, yep, it's true, we should have done things many years ago, we should have begun, but there's always a good day to start doing good stuff, and that day is today, and to do something positive. And so hopefully, you know, it's like there's this botanist, she gets pulled over to this parallel world, and there's a big mystery about, can she get home, and which Earth is worth saving, and sort of about actions and hope and home.
Cecil, I love that actions can matter. And I think so much in when we think of like the future, a lot of times it's written as dystopian. And I love that there's that hope that's really flooding through Shifting Earth. And Maeve is just such an incredible character. I really loved how strong she was, because the pandemic was such a scary time for us. So to see someone that took something that was scary and kind of pushed forward through it was really inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah, and I also really wanted to make sure, you know, like, my parents are scientists, both of them, my mother and my father, and you have two scientists, female scientists in this book, you know, Dr. Zuzi Reed and Maeve Lindholm. So I think that's a really good depiction of scientists is also really important.
Absolutely. Also, your pandemic baby was way better than mine. I just built an Animal Crossing island, so congratulations on that. And now, how about you, Roye? What was your inspiration? What was the spark of the idea for Iyanu?
Yeah, as somebody that was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, I've always wanted to create superhero and fantasy stories that were inspired by African history, culture, and mythology. And I grew up loving, you know, things like Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Legend of Korra, and even more recently, The Dragon Prince. And for me, it was really about how do I tell a story like that, but from the African perspective. And that's how the idea of Iyanu, Child of Wonder, came up. For those that don't know, here's the book. Iyanu is a action adventure fantasy story that follows our titular character, Iyanu, who is a teenage orphan girl that, loses all her memories. And then on a journey to find out who she is, she discovers that she has the powers that rival the gods of her land. And it's only these powers that can actually save Yoruba land, which is the world that we're in, from the corrupt, which are, animals that have essentially turned against humanity. So just imagine being chased by an aggressive giraffe. Like, how do you avoid that? I mean, at the end of the day, like with those titles that I mentioned, Avatar, Dragon Prince, Legend of Korra, there's a lot of action, adventure, and a lot of cool stuff that you get to see there. But to me, my thing has always been creating these very vast, huge worlds that are centered around character. And the running theme in Iyanu is that there's greatness in each and every one of us. You just have to sometimes dig deep to find that. And I think that that's something that's honestly anybody, even an adult, can really identify with. Because for me, it's always about, I grew up loving Peter Parker and Spider-Man, not because I was American, but because I could identify with that character. And with Iyanu, that's sort of like the same thing that I'm trying to do, where is stay authentic and true to my culture, but at the same time create it for a global audience in a way that people can see Iyanu, a kid that all she wants to be is normal, but she has these extraordinary abilities, and she has to really step up to accept the fact that sometimes it's okay to dig deep and let out those things that are extraordinary. And I think even just as creators, it's something we can all identify with. There's this burning desire to create, to bring something out to the world and to share it with the world. But sometimes fear, lack of self-belief is something that doesn't allow us to do it. But sometimes all you have to do is take the first step, write the first page, create the first panel. And, from there, it gets easier and easier and easier. And this is some of the parallels that we see with Iyanu, where she just takes that first step and it gets easier. And then she finds her friends, and then she finds an animal guide, which is this 5 foot tall magical leopard. And they all go on this crazy adventure that's, full of fun, adventure, danger, as well. But it's something that I feel like, not only kids and YA, but, even adults can really be enthralled by and see themselves in as well.
Absolutely. I love Iyanu, and the world that you created is phenomenal. How do you take on a corrupted giraffe? I don't know, but that's why we have to read the book
Yeah.
to find out. So I think we're almost at our end of our time here. We're going to be going to questions if some folks have dropped them in the chat, but just as a final thing, Roye, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what do you want readers to get out of your work? A young reader reading this, what's sort of a message that you would love them to come away with? And anyone can jump in.
I mean, I think I'd like for young people to, I think they're already thinking about the climate, and they're already thinking about what we can do. And, my book is sort of really an all ages book in terms of like for adults and for younger people. And I'm hoping that they think, A, that people are actually caring and trying to do stuff, and B, like just to start small actions and to start the conversation about the climate.
I love what you said, Cecil, about small actions, because it's sort of like the same approach that I would take. Because what I would love kids and even adults to take away from my stories is that you may not have superpowers, but there's always something you can do. In the beginning of the book, literally in the first couple of pages, Iyanu sees another teenager being bullied, and she steps up. And this is before she even knows that she has powers, and she steps up to protect him and point out that that's not right. That's not something that you do. So I really do hope that even as we tell all these fantastical stories, people can see the human moments in these characters and take that away from that and express that in our daily lives as well.
I think for me, it's the things in My Buddy Killer Croc are about standing up for yourself, also knowing like who's in your corner and who maybe isn't, which for kids that can be a tough lesson, like which adults are really there for you and which ones maybe have their own issues that need tending to. And also in writing comics and graphic novels, I know that I've also worked as like a after-school elementary school teacher, and I know that sometimes people poo-pooed comics or graphic novels for kids to read. But honestly, I think it's such a great book. And it's something that kids can really, when they read a book and they finish it, they feel like, okay, I can read something else now. So fostering that sense of reading and really getting kids excited about reading has really always been my goal, but especially in a graphic novel for 8 to 12-year-olds, I think that would be really great.
You're speaking librarian's language, Sara. For sure. But you, Vash.
So when I started working on Doughnuts and Doom, it was kind of like a self-help thing, because I was working in fast food at the time, full time. And 2 seconds, just the app is constantly giving me grief here. So I thought I could never do a full-length graphic novel. And when I was coming up with the character of Elena, who works in the donut shop, and she's trying to manage a band and do a band, successful with that, but she's just not managing. And Margot is a witch who is struggling with her magic. Kind of try to work through my own problems and be like, writing these characters, coming over their personal little problems, maybe gonna help me coming over my personal barriers and actually managing to write a full graphic novel. So I hope maybe that comes through in the story and maybe gives younger readers or older readers the inspiration who think, I don't have the energy to do what I want. I'm just stuck in this loop, the constant working every day. But maybe they find the inspiration and no, actually just gather a bit of energy, a bit of believe in yourself, maybe rely on just the one friend who can help me and take that one step, that leap of faith and do what I have to do. Don't want to spoil the story, but we all know where it's going in it, that they're going to take that leap of faith and probably succeed. I don't know if it was comprehensive. I've never been asked that question before, so.
No, that was perfect. And I love sort of you inspiring yourself and achieving your goal with your characters as they were doing that as well. And I hope if there is a band called Birds out there, we get a full album or at least an EP at some point.
I mean, that would be insane, but yeah.
Or at least a donut special somewhere based on your book. I think that's the next step.
I would love that.
So, Kelly, I think you were going to come back on. Do we have chapter questions? All right.
I'm here. I think that I think we'll probably just wrap up because it's over time. But we did have some great comments in the chat about your books being inspirations and how some books are getting so dark. So appreciation for books that teach younger audiences such inspiring, bigger themes. And so we thank all of you. I think you're right that sometimes graphic novels get like, oh, it's just a graphic novel. But I think personally, when a younger reader that's maybe a reluctant reader or maybe not a reluctant reader can become connected with a graphic novel, it's even a better experience because there's so many more different levels that they can relate to these books. All of you with your creativity and also like never dumbing down a message for a child, which to me is like the most amazing thing you can do as a writer, because kids don't want that anyway. So I think listening to all of you talk was really inspiring and fun, and we wish you all the best with these books and more to come. And thank you for your time today. Anybody want to say anything last before we hang up?
I just want to go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I've been writing comics for young kids. Somebody just mentioned the Plain Janes when libraries were, we didn't have a separate section for kids comics and stuff like that. And I just want to say thank you, librarians, for ushering in this golden age of comics for young people.
Agreed. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Roye, good to see you again. You did this for us last year too, so I appreciate it. And nice to see all of you again or meet you for the first time. And Derek, you are amazing. You know, this just means we're going to ask you to do this again. So have a great day, everybody. If you're not, for the
Thank you,
panelists
everybody.
on the phone, if you're going to hang up, feel free to hang up. And if not, we'll put you back as an attendee. So thank you so much. All right. My gosh, the day just keeps getting better. The next panel we have for you today is also going to be very exciting because it's going to be a little bit different. Also, just a side note, make sure you're following along in your program, because if you click on any of the links to the programs, it gives you more information about all of the authors, about all of their books, and about further reading in these genres. So we have this comprehensive program for you, so you can find out as much information as you need. And all of the information that we are sharing with you today is going to go out in an email wrap-up report, so you don't have to be scribbling down, you know, any title names or anything like that. You'll get all the information and a link to the recording as well. So our next program is Real Life Stories, and this is not a memoir autobiography type thing per se. It's more about how fictionally or in nonfiction, a graphic novel is a great way to relay a life story. It gets you really intimate with the characters and with the people in the book, and with what the author and the illustrator are trying to teach you about a specific person or about a specific time period. So our next moderator is Amy Wright. And Amy, we're happy that you're back with us too. And if you guys keep doing such a good job, you'll never get away from us. But Amy is a public history student, a PhD student at Carleton University in Ottawa, Ontario, studying the history of comic book censorship and its impact on vocational practice in schools and libraries around ideas of good reading. Previously, Amy served as the manager of school outreach and My Library New York City at the New York Public Library, and she was the inaugural president of the American Library Association Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable, which was a big deal for the ALA. Currently, Amy chairs the GNCRT's Addressing Comic Book Bans and Challenges Committee, which I'm sure is keeping you very busy these days. And you can follow Amy at Librarylandia for sporadic tweets. Amy, thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much, Kelly. And as we all come on screen, I'm just going to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to introduce everybody in alphabetical order, starting by first name, if that's okay. And I also, I've been sort of following all of you virtually through your work and totally, going on your Instagram profile. So it's nice to meet everybody in person for the panel. So first we are joined by Dina Muhammad. And Deena has been making comics for a long time, even though you are not very old. And we have Deena's forthcoming work, which is Shubeik, Lubeik, which roughly translates in Egyptian Arabic to Your Wish is My Command. And that is forthcoming. And that was more than 6 years of translation from the Arabic. And you also won the top prize at Cairo Comics Fest in 2017, which now is on my bucket list of Comic-Cons that I want to go to. Next, we have Kate Gavino, who's joining us. I believe you're calling in from France, correct? Yeah. So thanks so much for being here. Kate's upcoming work, Career in Books, is not Kate's first foray into graphic novels and comics. And this is also based on your long time in publishing and also at the Brooklyn Public Library, if I'm remembering correctly. Yep. Especially for our library audience, I thought that was worth pointing out. You have a lot of good library stuff in the title. And then we have Malaka Gharib, who also, not your first foray into the graphic novel format, super excited to read this. And I think your memoir, It Will Not Always Be Like This, of all your summers in Cairo, spending time with your dad and your stepmother and your siblings, was super fascinating. And I did cry a little bit at the end. So thank you all for being here. I think one of the great strengths of all of your work is it shows that a lot of people still have perceptions around the graphic novel format. As you may have heard from Kelly's introduction, I am currently chairing a committee on bans and challenges. And I think a lot of the perception, especially around comic books, unfortunately now, is people still have an idea of them either as a genre, only superheroes, though I love the superhero format, or only a particular age category, i.e. for young readers, when in fact, these are such an important format for storytelling. So I was wondering if, to kick things off, if you wouldn't mind all answering the question, why comics? Why is this sort of your chosen format for storytelling? Was it something that you've always thought about? Was it something that sort of lent itself naturally to stories as you went? And if you don't mind, we'll go alphabetical order again. So we'll go Deena, Kate, and then Malaka.
I'm so sorry. Hi. I thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Amy, for the amazing introduction. That's just what I said when I was muted. I got into comics by accident. I was always someone who enjoyed drawing and someone who enjoyed writing, but separately. So when I was at school, I would be the kid who was always drawing in class. But sometimes in the summers, I used to like to write my own stories. And for some reason, I never used to put those two things together. I would just write in the summer, and then in school time, I would draw. And then I started being on the internet more, especially when I was a teenager. And at the time, I wasn't actually making comics on purpose. What I was doing is I would have a point I wanted to make, and I would use art to make that point. So I would make a post like on Tumblr, on Facebook, whatever. At the time, that was what I was using. And so I would make like little comics to illustrate my point. But I wasn't doing it in a genre savvy kind of way. I was aware of comics, but I had not grown up reading comics very much because they're kind of expensive in Egypt. I just sort of knew about like very old comics like Tintin, and like we have Miki, we have some old Egyptian comics in Egypt. And it just ended up that I ended up in comics because I was just posting a lot online, and I started making a web comic that that I posted on Tumblr that was kind of about social issues. So when I was 18 and very opinionated, whenever I had an opinion, I would just make a comic about it. And I originally started by making it through the lens of this Muslim superhero character, and it was called Qahira, which is the Arabic name for Cairo. And it was posted in English and in Arabic. And that was just basically my introduction into comics. So my introduction to comics was making comics as opposed to reading them. And because of that, actually, because it kind of became so popular, suddenly I felt like I had a responsibility to learn more about comics. And then I ended up researching the history of Egyptian comics. I ended up getting very passionate about it, and then I sort of realized, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So it's a bit of a convoluted answer, but that's just how I ended up in comics. So kind of just through the desire to make points and the ability to draw.
I love that. That's fantastic. I think a good origin story is important when we're talking comics. So, Kate, if you wouldn't mind answering why comics now for yourself.
Yeah, my story is a bit similar to Deena, where I loved writing and drawing, but I frequently kept the two separate. And I studied fiction writing in college. And I always felt like writing came very naturally to me. But whereas drawing, which I loved to do, it was something that I was a bit more insecure about. I always saw it as more of a challenge. And it's still something that kind of scares me to this day. And I think that's also what attracts me to it as well. Because I feel very comfortable writing. But in terms of like my artistic style, my technical skills, I'm always like questioning myself and wondering like if I could do this better or differently. And I think that challenge is kind of why I love to create graphic novels, because it's that scary part that kind of draws me to it. And whenever I think about making a comic or a graphic novel, I always ask like, why this format? Like, why can't I just write this, or why can't it just be like an image? And I always am seeking out stories that can be elevated by juxtaposing the words and the images next to each other. And I kind of like the kind of second or auxiliary story that you can tell in the images, or like because you have the text, but then like if you look closer at the images, I like to throw in like lots of Easter eggs or just like the details of a character's outfit, for example. Like I like that like kind of layer that graphic novels offer.
I love that. And I love that you explicitly called out the Easter eggs, because I'm always so surprised that when people maybe aren't huge graphic novel readers, they'll pull out Easter eggs in movies and overlook the fact that all of you cartoonists have always been doing that in such fantastic ways. So Malaka, we're going to go over to your origin story and why comics.
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me here. And I think this is the first time, this is so niche. This is the first time I've ever been in a comics panel with a Filipino cartoonist, an Egyptian cartoonist, and I'm the Filipino Egyptian cartoonist. I think it's like so crazy and so amazing that yeah, we've arrived. We're here. This is great. So actually, it's really cool hearing Dina's answer and Kate's answer, because like I too like did not grow up like reading too many comics. Like I more come from like a writerly background and just kind of used images and comic and like words together, and eventually started making my own comics. And when I realized that, like, again, similarly to Dina's answer, when I realized that like, oh, I really like comics, then I started getting into it and reading more comics. But when I was a kid, I wanted to pull out my old diary, but in doing that, I dropped my water, so that's why I had to pause my video for a bit. Then I was like, screw the diary, I'm not getting it. But basically, in my diary, I would write what happened in the day, and then I would draw these little doodles on the side of like me like feeling really angry, or you know, I think one of the things I was fixated on was like drawing all the food that I ate during the day. So I would draw the little foods that I ate during the day in the margins. And so this idea of just like combining memoir, like writing about myself and like using these little doodles to emote and add value and sort of like provide like deeper context and meaning to like what was happening to me, that just felt like a very natural extension.
Interesting you all point out the fact that it was something, especially drawing, that you all did from a younger age, especially connected with that idea of emotion. I was thinking about, you know, Linda Berry often talks about the fact that kids think visually, and I think it's a language that we all grow up with, that we somehow kind of get, you know, it gets sort of diminished, and we sort of preference the written word so much, and we overlook the fact that we can have so many different multiple layers, especially of emotion, when we're adding in images. So sort of moving on, but building specifically on all of your upcoming work, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what inspired specifically your upcoming work. And I know for Deena, this is definitely so many years coming, but if you all wouldn't mind just talking a little bit very specifically, like the origin story and what was your inspiration behind your upcoming work. So again, we'll just start with Deena and then go to Kate and then Malaka. Deena, is your video frozen? Or maybe Kate, do you want to start and then we'll go back to Deena?
All right. Yeah, so my graphic novel, A Career in Books, it was inspired by my first couple jobs after college in book publishing. So the graphic novel follows three friends who met in college, and after college they move in together.
Yeah. Okay, let's try to be brief. Essentially, after having started in webcomics and sort of working.
Deena, do you want to maybe, we can go off video and maybe we can just do audio? Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, or is it still lagging?
There's a little bit of lag, but we can hear you okay.
Yeah, so maybe we have Kate go, and then we'll come back to Deena.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Kate.
No problem. Yeah, so my book, A Career in Books, it follows three friends who met in college, and then they graduate and they move into a small apartment in Brooklyn together, and each of them get different jobs in book publishing at different publishers. And it was inspired kind of by my own experience fresh out of college working for publishers and interning for them while I was in school. And I wanted to specifically focus on the three girls' friendship, their relationship with money, and their new friendship with their next door neighbor, who is a 92-year-old writer who once upon a time won the Booker Prize. And I just wanted to, like, I kind of threw in all the elements that I love reading about. I love stories set in New York City. I love Asian American stories. I love books about intense friendships that maybe border on codependency. I love graphic novels that feature like very like descriptive food experiences and clothing experiences. And I love books set in the office space. So I kind of threw all that into this graphic novel. And I just wanted to explore how this friendship grows and changes in the backdrop of these girls' first professional experiences, like their struggles in the office setting, from like microaggressions to like navigating their first paychecks and salaries, and all the three main characters are like 21, 22. So the book takes place in the first year after they graduate. So within that year, like there's tons of changes, but like there's not like a definite end to their story because they're still like only 22 or 23. So I just wanted to kind of like set this book in that very like wild time of their lives where they're still kind of like figuring out who they are as adults, what they want to do in terms of their careers, and kind of their relationship to books and literature and writing in general. So it was just like a very like, I think, fertile period to mine from. And it's like once I started writing, like I immediately like felt nostalgic for that period of my life. And so it was just like a very rich period to mine from.
I love that. So Malaka, we're going to go to you, and then we'll come back to Deena.
Yeah, so my upcoming book, It Won't Always Be Like This, is another memoir about my childhood summers in the Middle East. Since I was 9 years old, I went and spent my summers with my dad and his new family, which I abruptly learned. And over the next 15 years, like sort of develop a relationship with them, from looking at them from a child's perspective to looking at them from an adult's perspective at the very end of the book. And the central question that I wanted to ask actually was, I want to spend a long time, 2 years, examining what my childhood summers in Egypt, how it affected my worldview. And then secondly, I realized that like from examining that question is that you can really make a lot of very deep and profound relationships with other people with very, very little. You don't need to speak the same language. You don't need to have the same culture. It's possible to develop these very, very profound relationships, and which I was able to do with my stepmother ultimately. What was interesting too is like doing a memoir, another one. It's like, how many more stories do you possibly have to say on the same life? And I'm still in my 30s, so it's like I haven't really lived much. But you can look at the same thing from a million different perspectives, and that was a really cool. Lesson that I learned from the experience. Like, oh, maybe I could do a third memoir out of this. I don't know, looking at it from a different angle. I don't know. Yeah.
I love that. And I think especially graphic novels lend themselves so well to the idea of putting on different lenses and like different viewpoints. And Deena, we're going to go to you because you specifically also have 3 different characters and 3 different lenses on the similar sort of idea of wish fulfillment.
Yes. Can you guys hear me, first of all?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So essentially my graphic novel trilogy, it's a trilogy in Arabic. It's about a world where you can buy and sell wishes. It's an urban fantasy, I guess that's the official genre of it. And it takes place in a world where you can buy and sell wishes, but they are more powerful there. So if you buy first class wish for $1 million, you get a fancy wish that will give you exactly what you want. But if you buy a cheap wish, for example, for like $500, it's sold in a can, and it tricks you, sort of like a monkey's paw. And that's kind of the concept that the whole world is built on. And the main idea is that there's a man who has a kiosk in Cairo. And in Cairo, we have these like small corner shops. I don't know if you have similar ones. I think they're called bodegas or just like corner store stalls. And he has 3 first-class wishes that his dad left him, but he doesn't want to use them because he thinks they're religiously impermissible. So he thinks that wishes are, this is called haram in Arabic. So he just thinks he doesn't want to use the wish, but he's in debt. So he decides to sell each of the 3 wishes, 3 first-class wishes that he has at a huge discount. So for the first time, people who wouldn't have had access to a first-class wish are able to buy one. And each book is about who buys each wish. So the first book, it's about a working-class widow. Her name is Aziza, who is buying a wish in the memory of her husband. The second book is about a rich student who studies wishes, and they're trying to buy a wish to wish for happiness to cure their depression. And the third book is about the kiosk owner himself. And he has to decide if he's going to use a wish himself because one of his friends is dying and refuses to take his last wish. In Arabic, they are 3 books. In English, actually, the volume you're getting is the collection. So it's all 3 books in one book. I really wish I could play a video so you guys could see it. I'm scared to start the video in case it just killed everything, but let me try. Is this working? Maybe. So you're probably gonna have this like 10 seconds after I say it. But essentially, this is the English version. So it's like all 3 books. These are the Arabic ones. These are 3 Arabic books, and you get 1 English book. And that's what the books are about. I will stop my video again, just so you don't suffer.
So super exciting. I thoroughly enjoyed reading all of your works. It kind of reminded me about why I think we love graphic novels and all that they can bring and all the different stories, especially there's such emotional resonance in all of your work. And I think that is such a great, beauty of the marriage between words and pictures. So before we break, because I just do want to be mindful of time, I just want to make sure everybody listening in and watching knows where to find you, either digitally or if you have any in-person events. So Kate, if you don't mind starting first, and we'll go Kate, Malaka, and then Deena.
Yeah, so my website is my name, kategavino.com. And you can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at Gavino as well. I'm doing a virtual event for the Brooklyn Book Festival in September. And as mentioned, I live in France, so every event I'm going to be doing is virtual. But yeah, just follow me at Kate Gavino for all updates about my work.
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. I'm always on there messing around. My Instagram is at Malaka Gharib. I'm also on Twitter at Malaka Gharib. I'm also going to do a virtual event at the Brooklyn Book Fest, so I'll see you there, Kate. And I'm going to be at MICE in Boston in September or November. I forgot which date it was. November? I forgot. Or October. It's in October. So I'll be around. Events come up. So, and I usually keep my Instagram pretty updated on like what I'm doing.
Yeah, I also have a website. It's Deena Draws .art. So maybe I should type it down because it's a little confusing. So my website's just Deena Draws art, which is kind of easy to remember.
That's great. And just so you know, we'll have all of this information in the wrap up, so you don't have to
my Instagram and Twitter are embarrassing to say out loud, so I'm just gonna write them down as well. anyone is a Cairo,
Great. Yes, and all of this information we'll put in the wrap-up report too.
Oh, okay, great. That's good. Also, say anything out loud. I'm sorry. I'm hopefully might be in. Yes, I might be in Michigan in November. There is a lag, so you're getting this like again 10 seconds after I say it. But I might be at the American Museum in November, hopefully if visas work out. But other than that, I'm in Cairo. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you all so much. I mean, what we are happy to take the technical delays when we can have somebody calling in from Cairo, from Scotland, from Paris. I mean, we'll take it. It's been such an exciting program. We are running not over, but there was one kind of fun question in the chat, and we will address some of these questions that didn't get answered if we can in the wrap up or in the notes after. But thank you all so much for that panel. That was really wonderful. Your books are all going to be so exciting and fun, and we're going to learn a lot about a bunch of different characters and cultures, and it's exciting to have you talk about your work the way that you have. And Amy, you always do such a great job. So thank you so much for being here today, everybody. So next up, our last panel of the day is our must-have fandom panel. We're again, like I said, we're so glad you joined us. All this information is in the program. If you click on the link to what the program is, it'll bring you to more information about all of the authors and about their books and about more titles in these collections and in these genres. So our next moderator, Thea James, she is going to lead our must-have fandom panel, which will be very exciting. And as always, put your questions in the chat and we will get to them if we can. Sorry, we're just trying to keep you guys on schedule too. But Thea James is one half of the maniacal duo behind the Book Smugglers. Hi, Thea. An award-winning, Hugo Award-winning sci-fi and fantasy book review blog. Thea is a Filipina American, but grew up in Hawaii, Indonesia, and Japan. She is a full-time book nerd, so are we, who works in publishing at Penguin Random House for her day job and currently resides in Marlborough, New York with her partner and their rambunctious cat. And Thea also has a cookbook called Cooking for Wizards, Warriors, and Dragons. Thea, thank you for being here today and for moderating our final panel.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Great. So hi, everyone. As Kelly said, my name is Thea James, and I'm delighted to be moderating this session, Must Have Fandom Books. So I'm going to introduce our panelists as they come on screen. And just to note, Cami Garcia was going to join the panel. She might still make it, but you know, we'll hold down the fort with Edgar and with Cliff. So first up, we've got Edgar Camacho, who is a cartoonist who was born in 1989 in Metepec, Mexico. He has received multiple comic and illustration awards in his homeland, including a prize for Summons Alley and Mexico's first National Young Graphic Novel Award for Onion Skin, and has also built a devoted fan base with his webcomic series Tiras Sin Sentido, Senseless Strips. His new book is Super Trash Clash, available December 13th, 2022 from Top Shelf Productions at IDW. Spoiler alert, it did make me cry at the end. Cliff Chiang is also joining us, and his artwork has been hailed for its fluid and confident storytelling and sweeping line work and nuanced style. Graduating from Harvard University with a joint degree in English Lit and Visual Arts. He worked in editorial at Disney Adventures magazine, love that magazine, and Vertigo DC Comics before making the leap into freelance illustration. Paper Girls, the Eisner Award-winning series he co-created with writer Brian K. Vaughan, has been adapted for Prime Video. I've only caught the first few episodes, but I'm already sucked in and love it. Cliff lives and works in New Jersey, and his new work is Catwoman, Lonely City, available as a graphic novel on December 13th, 2022 from DC Comics. So thank you so much for joining, Edgar and Cliff. It's wonderful to be here with you. So why don't we start with an introduction and an icebreaker? So I'd like you to tell the audience a fun fact about yourself and share one unpopular fandom opinion. So for example, I'm Thea. I'm currently writing a Beetlejuice themed cookbook, which means I've watched more Beetlejuice than you can possibly imagine, and it's been awesome. And my unpopular opinion is episode 1, The Phantom Menace, isn't a bad movie. So why don't we start with you, Edgar?
All right. Well, I'm Edgar Camacho, and my fun fact is that I like the end of the TV show Lost. I think it's a good ending. I love it. And what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Well, I think you've wrapped it all into one. I think that's an unpopular fandom opinion. But yeah. Anything else you want to share about yourself?
And I like to hear 8-hour podcast.
That is intense. Very cool.
Yeah.
Cliff, how about you?
Hi, I'm Cliff Chiang, and despite drawing paper girls, I do not know how to ride a bike at all. So which made drawing all those bicycles kind of tough. Unpopular fandom opinions. Wow, I don't know. I feel like maybe all my opinions on fan stuff are kind of unpopular. I think that's kind of the cool thing about it, is like everybody's got their own weird little, bugaboo about something or other that, sets them off. So I'm blanking for the moment, but if I come up with something, I'll let you know.
All good. Great. So why don't we talk a little bit about each of your new works? So Edgar, why don't you go first? Tell us a little bit about Super Trash Clash in your own words.
Yeah, this is my second top shelf book. This is a book for children, most for it, but the teenagers can also have something to read there. And this is a book about nostalgia, about a lot of Easter eggs, about it's a story about a girl who her mother bought her a video game, and this video game is just the worst video game ever, but she did it with the best intentions, and the girl exchanges for another one that she really wants, and then try to get it back. And that's the story of the book, and it's set it on the 90s. It's a lot of nostalgia, a lot of emotions, and the kids, the younger readers, will find a fun adventure, and the other ones like me, will find a good memories back in time where you have to blow into the cartridge to make it work, even if it is worse for the cartridge to do that. And I think that's resume my recent book.
That's great. And yes, the blowing into the cartridge, it was magic every time. I firmly believe that worked. So love to see it in the book. Cliff, why don't you tell us a little bit about Catwoman?
Catwoman Lonely City takes place in Gotham City 10 years after Selena Kyle has been sent to prison. She gets out and comes back to a Gotham that's very changed. It's very heavily policed and very gentrified. And she's, upon her release, she's trying to pull off perhaps the biggest heist of her career, which is breaking into the Batcave in order to solve the mystery of Batman's dying words.
Really good pitches, guys. So this is the fandom panel. So I want to talk a little bit about fandom and how it intersects or influences your work. So Edgar, your book is very clearly an ode to video game fandom, right? You've got the arcade tokens, the blowing, and the cartridge. Encounter Champions 2, which I think is Street Fighter 2, but awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with fandom and how important that was in your writing?
In video games, I always have the I'm not, I was the Nintendo kid, I always have these consoles of Nintendo, and then but I always have them, a little bit not on time, when the N64 was out, I have the Super Nintendo. When the GameCube was out, I have the N64. So I was a little bit behind of everyone with this, but when I play these video games with my brothers, with my friends, I find a place where I was really happy, where I can play for hours, discovering these words. And in my book, in this book, I try to recollect all that memories, with all that Easter eggs, like you say, this game was a Street Fighter 2, this was what we all wanna play in those times, in the arcade machines. It was all about fighting games, and then it was all other gender. But in those days, in fandom, I loved that, go to that arcade and having friends in there and play hours there. And my mother go and find me there, and she was, you know, and that's it. I like I love video games, and I try to put that on the book.
It definitely came through, and it was very nostalgic. And also, Street Fighter 2 is kind of universal, I feel like. In Indonesia, we had it too, and it was in the arcade, and I was like, all right, let's go. So Cliff, same question over for you. Your relationship kind of, or the work reading Catwoman, I'm super impressed by it, right? Like there's this blend of vulnerability and like kind of the steel tensile strength that is Selina Kyle. Tell us about your intersection with fandom and being a Selina Kyle fan or Batman overall.
I've been a long time comic book fan, reading them as a kid and then kind of growing up with them and then re-encountering them as an adult through some of the Vertigo material, kind of more geared for older audiences. And I think what I've taken away from it is that, everybody is, a fan of something. And with Catwoman, I've tried to embrace all of her different incarnations. We know the character through so many different venues. There's the TV show from the 60s, there's the movies, and then there's the cartoons, and then the books. And, with Catwoman Lonely City, Selina is older. And what I'm trying to do is sort of embrace all of that and say, like, these were all facets of her career at some point. And, just have this kind of all-encompassing, view of fandom where, you might like this phase of her publishing history or that, and it's all good. And, trying to bring that all together in a way, it kind of makes her a fuller character, like, that she's been different in different parts of her life, the way we all are.
No, absolutely. And she does feel fuller. I really love the justice that you do her in your book. So that's great. Um, so let's talk a little bit about relationships because they do feature quite prominently, right, in both of your books. So Edgar, as I said earlier, I got teary at the end of Super Trash Clash at the relationship between Dull and her mom. So can you talk a little bit about, relationships in the book or in your life and how that kind of, expressed itself?
Yeah, my work always deals with everyday life, everyday stories. Very close to everyday, like taking the bus, laundry, all that stuff. And in this book, it was a story that happened to me in my childhood with my brothers. It was based on a real story. My mom bought us a game that we didn't like it, so we changed it for another one. And I always had to live with that, with that sense of doing something wrong because we don't appreciate the how much effort our parents do for us, like having your games, to make you a little happier. So that relationship with my parents, it's always been there. And it's part of the book, it's like a tribute to those days when you just was a teenager or a kid who doesn't give anything, like, I don't care, I just want to play, leave me alone, all kind of things. And it's like make paces, like reconciliation with that relationship with your parents, with your brothers, because yeah, it was I was a little bit like a mean kid, a bad kid, like I don't appreciate how much my family do for me until I was older, and that's something I want to put on the book.
It definitely came through loud and clear, so it was beautiful. So Cliff, same question, and then I'll introduce Cami afterwards. But I think in your book, right, Selena has a really interesting relationship with lots of folks, but I really like the Barbara Gordon and Selena Kyle relationship and kind of the legacies that they're either trying to uphold or tear down. So talk a little bit about relationships in your book.
I think with the characters being older, you have this sense of all the time and all the different roles that they've played in their lives and how that might inform how they feel about each other. And then, also in this case, the tragedy that kind of kicks everything off has also, really changed the way the characters interact. Primarily, I think between Selena and Barbara, it's about loss and how you deal with loss. And I think uh, having lost, the most important people in their lives to this tragedy, how do they move on? And I think Selena has not really had that opportunity being in prison, and she hasn't quite done the work. Whereas with or the opportunity to do the work. Whereas for Barbara Gordon, having lost her father and Dick Grayson, she's been having to deal with that, having lost her mobility as well. Like she's been through a lot, and I like contrasting the two and seeing how someone who has perhaps had a better support network, maybe had some really good therapy, is able to come out of that stronger and in a different way from Selena, who's perhaps more focused on her own sadness and maybe a little bit of revenge on her mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cami, welcome. I'm so glad you could join us. So hi everyone, this is Cami
Hi.
Garcia. Cami, do you want to tell us a little bit about your book and your take on John Constantine?
So, John Constantine is obviously a challenging character to write for a YA appropriate audience because he can't smoke or drink or, use tons of foul language or make, a lot of substance abuse decisions that are not appropriate. Probably not for adults either. So in this take, in my book with Isaac Goodhart, instead of making bad, life decisions in that way, John is making bad magical decisions. He still has the same canon. His father's a famous magician, but he lives with his mother and his stepfather, who's also a magician. And basically, he's just graduated high school, and they want him to go to the United States to study with a very prestigious female magician, and kind of as like an apprentice. And he, like all 17-year-olds, thinks he knows everything, and he does not need to do that. And he he already knows about magic. And instead, his best friend Veronica, who lives in the US, who comes to the UK once a year, it's summer, and she is the drummer for a punk band that just lost its frontman, and she wants John to come and do like a summer tour, punk, like a local tour. And so he basically pretends he wants to go meet the magician so he can get to the US, and then meets the magician, offends her, and goes on to, go to basically, I'm probably way older than everyone here. All the art's incredible. All of the places that they play, all the shows are based on the interiors of real punk clubs from the 90s. And then they kind of start this punk tour, but they also get their hands on an occult book and dabble in magic that is way above their pay grade with disastrous consequences. And it really affects Veronica, who is literally his ride or die best friend. And so, I was a teacher for 17 years before I became a writer. I was a reading specialist, and I actually wrote my Teen Titans series for struggling readers and libraries. I designed that whole series. So the first two books you can read in either order, because I always had kids telling me that they couldn't read some of my series because the first book was always checked out. So with this one, I wanted to still write to the same type of audience, but it feels a little older because, with the Teen Titans TV shows, I get like 7-year-olds who come up with the Titans books because they've watched Go. And they're clutching them, and I don't even know if they can really read them. But Gabriel and I work on that series. Gabriel Piccolo and I work on that series with that in mind, where Constantine is edgier and feels a little older. And after he makes this terrible choice that affects his friend, which, as we all know as adults, it's way better if you do something terrible that affects you than someone else you care about. I tell teens, Isaac is so incredible. I'm like, it's about, the book is about, rock, like punk music and, hot teenagers and like partying. But what the book is really about is how to come back how to right your wrongs and come back from a terrible decision, how to make things right with other people, how to ask for help. Constantine gets in a situation that is so hard for him, and he really doesn't even have the skill set to deal with it. So he has to figure out who will help me. How do I get help? And also he has to figure out how to make things right. We also introduce a new character. Her name is Luna. She's Latinx, female magician. So John is still bi in the series, but you'll see he dates everyone. He's like got collections of phone numbers stuffed into his pockets. So I think it's a fun book. It's a book about something that's masquerading as just a fun book, which is always what I kind of try to do in my books. I try to make it seem like the book is just really fun, but then I try to layer it in a way with the writing that it has a deeper meaning. And obviously, Isaac is such a master artist, and his layouts really, I have a lot of people, prose writers who obviously don't understand sequentials, who, think that like the artist is like an illustrator, and, like they're just like drawing stuff, that like looks cool on the page. And they don't understand that like the sequential art in the story is part of the story, like it's part of the storytelling. And Isaac's layouts really prove that, because he has all these really cool kind of Steranko unconstrained layouts in there. And just the way everything jumps off the page, I feel like it creates an intimacy with the reader that I really love for teens, because I feel like it kind of sucks you in a way that, I feel like all the comics I love best do that. But, I like to take all the credits. I feel like the artist just makes me look good. That's really like my job, is I get to take all this glory when I really do the easy part. But I just love the fact that it also, the color palettes like purples and pinks and blue. So I feel like it has all this stuff that's just kind of like I say, I always want like these books to be like a gateway into regular comics and graphic novels for teens. When I came to DC, they basically were like, we would really like you to write books that get kids that, might not even either like to read or might not be, be scared to try comics, to give comics a try. So hopefully that's what we did. I think it's gorgeous. And it is about something, but I always tell librarians, I'm not suggesting you necessarily tell any of your, teens that, but it's definitely got kind of a deeper core.
It definitely does, and it is beautiful. The art is fantastic and really does pull you in. And I appreciated your take on John Constantine. I was interested to see what you would do. But you still kept, like, even though it's for a younger audience, like he still has his snark, he still has his sharpness. So worked beautifully.
Thank
Um,
you. It was definitely hard.
yeah. I'm sure. Um, and I'm glad that you brought up sort of art and, how that informs some of the storytelling, right? Because the words are one part, but, comics and graphic novels is a visual medium, and manga too. And both Cliff and Edgar, you both write and Drew write these books that we're talking about today. And I know Cliff for sure, like you've worked with Brian and like other writers. So why don't we start with you? How is it different, like doing the whole enchilada yourself versus, working with a writer who's not you?
It's a lot more stressful. I don't have a safety net anymore, where, a writer has kind of figured out, the spine of the story, and I can kind of just embellish it. I'm doing the visual storytelling, but I don't have to worry about, if the character arcs are working and all that sort of stuff. So this being my first attempt at long form writing, I was very nervous about it, and, did multiple drafts and outlines and beat sheets and everything just to make sure that, it was rock solid. But I enjoy it. There's something about doing the writing and the art that I think makes for a a particular kind of reading experience that you can get from comics and that you might not get from other media. It's very direct, and I think you also get the personality of the creators, really strongly.
Yeah, and Edgar, over to you. Same thing, because you're writing and illustrating as well. And I don't know if you've worked with like a writer for the format before, but tell us a little bit about your process and how that kind of works.
Yeah, I always work, alone, and in a new comic that I'm doing right now, I'm working with a writer, so it's my first time doing that kind of work, and it's very different from everything, It's just like I'm sitting and figuring out the pages and everything, and I don't have to worry like you said, and about the character arc, about the plot, all these things, but in this book, I do everything, the writing and the art. And I think in my process, I think I express myself drawing, than writing with words. So I try to put a lot of sequence without dialogue, because I think for me, I express myself better like that, where entire scenes where no one says one word, just a lot of pages with just drawing, and I feel very comfortable doing that. But working with another person is, I'm enjoying that process too, because for me it's just taking a step behind and relaxing a little bit, just a little bit, just to focus on drawing and be more on the page, like not on the whole story.
No, absolutely. Very similar with cookbooks. I have a chef and I just write the introductions and give her the concepts, and I'm like, okay, you're really doing the magic here. So all good. All right, I know we're almost at time. So just one last question for everyone. Is there a fandom that you haven't written about yet that you would really like to? And why don't we start with Cami this time?
Well, I've written for X-Files, which became canon. I've written for DC. I would say that the Buffy people are really missing out, like that they have not contacted me. It is like my favorite thing, and I would kill it. I would kill it with Buffy. So I think Buffy's like my secret favorite fandom.
Love it. Got to get is it Dark Horse now? I'm not sure where the license is, but we got to get those people on the
I
phone.
think there's a different one for the pros, but I know Dark Horse, they did the run of the comics that I love. Like,
Yeah,
I really
agreed. That was the A+. So let's go, Cliff. What about you? Fandom you haven't done yet?
It's probably the book that brought me back into comics when I was in college. So I'd love to do something in the Sandman universe.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of
DC,
Netflix show.
hopefully
Yeah.
DC's listening. They should definitely snap him up.
Yes, DC overlords. And Edgar, how about you?
Oh, I would love to do something for Batman animated or something like that, a cover or something, and something also for Paper Girls, like a variant cover here in Mexico or something like that. I would love to do that.
That sounds great.
Amazing. I expect to see all of these things happen. So, excellent. And I mean, I think that brings us right at time. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This was really great, and highly recommend every single one of these books. They were all fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had so many great comments in the chat. What a fun program this has been. I think you guys really were the best way to end this, with so many fun little snippets about your work and about all of our characters that we love, and seeing them in different lights. And Thea, thank you for all your great questions. Cami, we're glad you got to join us. It couldn't have gone better. So thank you all so much. We are looking forward to your works that you do, your works that are going to come out in the future. And thank you all so much for joining us today. This was so fun. Like we said earlier, all the information's in the program. There's tons of resources in there for you. There's actually even Sandman, Stranger Things collections, manga titles that you might be missing. Anything, you name it, we've got it in there for you. So we hope that you'll check that out. And we will be sending it all in the wrap-up report, as well as the video, so you can see whatever parts you missed. And thank you for being such wonderful supporters of graphic novels and fandom titles. and of Penguin Random House Library Marketing. We couldn't thank you more for joining us and sticking with us today. And how exciting. When have you ever started your day out with, you know, the Karate Kid? So Ralph Macchio, again, a huge shout out for you for joining us today. That was wonderful and inspiring, and how could the day possibly get any better? So thank you all so much. Enjoy your day, and we will see you next year at LibraryCon. Thank you.